do you believe the clinical trials are accurate? So in other words, we've talked about that there are side effects for medicine. So people say, okay, I have to take into account the side effects, but at least I get the benefits because the drug supposedly has this benefit. Now, there was a book by a guy named Ben Goldacre who wrote a book called Bad Pharma, Pharma. And for the 15 hours of audio tape that I listened to in the car, he spent 15 hours explaining every possible way to manipulate a clinical trial. And at the end, I was thinking, like, how do you actually know when you're told that this has this benefit, that you really get the benefit and it's just not a bias by the people who conducted the study? So in terms of when we go to buy sugar cereals, we say, it doesn't matter which one you give me, they're all processed white flour cereals with sugar. But when it comes to medicine, people pretty much think this is tested, it's safe, it works very well, and there's some small side effects. What's your opinion of how we should view prescription medicines and clinical trials?
Well, we participate, in my office, we participated in clinical trials. In fact, we were the lead site for the heart failure drug Entresto. You know, the one that singing that song, tomorrow the sun will come up tomorrow. So that's exactly fun to be sick. So that's for Entresto. So we were like we enrolled the first patient worldwide, et cetera, et cetera. And so the drug came out with a positive effect, published in New England Journal, got it to market, record time, et cetera. Largest heart failure study in history. So it was compared to an ACE inhibitor. An older ACE inhibitor, which is part of the standard of care for heart failure. And so patients were given either Entresto or heart failure or valsartan or Vasotec, excuse me, and watched over a period of time. And so what they saw was that the patient on the study drug, they're just a little bit better than the patients on the old ACE inhibitor. But then if you look at all the patients and then you look at the survival curves, they were all dying almost the same rate. It's just that early on, the new drug, decreased the death rate by a certain amount, and then after that period of time, the death rate was parallel. And so it was just a relatively small difference, but it's, oh yeah, 27% improvement in survival and improvement in terms of well-being. But every patient got worse. Everybody's heart failure progressed, and the new drug slowed it down just a small amount compared to the old drug. And so it's almost as though if you're driving your car and your brakes are completely out, and then they do something, maybe your brakes are only half functional, and you get just a little bit better, but your brakes are still dysfunctional. That's what it is with the medications. And so we can show a little bit of difference over time. But the disease state is progressing. And in those situations where I've seen medications reverse a disease. And so basically it can suppress symptoms or mask the disease, which we're pretty much doing. But it does it at the cost of many side effects and adverse reactions. And so they've gotten to where they don't even manipulate the trials now. They just do poor studies and they just use it. There's a new drug for, you may have heard, the injectable drugs for cholesterol now. And I sat on one of the panels, one of the faculty panels for that. And, it's a monoclonal antibody drug. It inhibits an enzyme that we don't know whose purpose it is in the human body. They've only done safety trials up to 12 months. They didn't see many side effects, but they've only looked at, say, maybe 1,000 patients, subjects in one study, a few hundred in another study. So you don't have a large, population representation. And so it's not until long after the drug has been out on the market you start to see these problems. Now, we see lots of problems with statin drugs that were not reported a long time ago because all the statin drugs are generic now. And all of a sudden you're hearing reports of muscle rupture and mental decline. And of course, in a large study by AstraZeneca, they saw an increased rate of diabetes with statin drugs. And so we're seeing many, many adverse reactions to statin drugs that have been there all along, but they're suppressed. And so the studies, they look at, single biomarkers or clinical events. They focus on those things. Oftentimes, they don't look at these drugs long enough to get, a good longitudinal picture of things. And many adverse events go unreported in that short period of time or overlooked.
Another thing to consider is that in the clinical trials, they recruit perfect patients. We get the person who just has high cholesterol. Well, that's not real life. It's the diabetic who also has migraine headaches and 3 other things going on, who now is taking a statin drug. And there is no way to do a clinical trial to test all the potential interactions with all the combinations of drugs that people can take. So you get a whole different picture during, when these drugs are prescribed to the general public as opposed to the perfect patients who are recruited to the trial. And there is a lot of misbehavior going on too. I mean, people have written books about this, that changing the endpoints, there are all kinds of ways that you can manipulate the data so that you produce the information that you want. And just so you know, I've written a lot of articles about this lately. I don't know if anybody here knows the approval rate for new drugs or new uses for old drugs at FDA. It's 94%. 94%. For devices, it's 99%. And I see a time coming when the drug companies will send a memo to the FDA saying, this is just to notify you, we're going to be putting a new drug on the market, and we're probably going to kill a few people, you know how it goes, but we just wanted to give you a heads up that you'll be hearing about this. I mean, at some point, why even go through an approval process? So anyway, I think that the fact that a clinical trial shows a drug to be safe or that it's approved by the FDA doesn't really tell you much at this point.
That would be a very big change for the public to accept, because right now we believe that we're responsible if we go in the candy aisle or the soda aisle to be careful, because we don't necessarily trust that the soda companies are providing us healthy products. But it does seem that most Americans do believe that when a doctor prescribes them a medicine, that this is proven to be, 1, safe, and 2, effective.
That's true in general, but I'm seeing now more and more patients are coming back. I'll prescribe a medication, I'll come back, so I decided not to take this drug because I looked up the side effects. I mean, patients are becoming wiser now. And information is at everyone's fingertips now. And so I'm beginning to see a transition, even my older patients. So I looked this up on the internet, and it has side effect X, Y, and Z. And then I'll say, well, did you look up the side effects of that baked chicken you're eating and the fish? And so I'm actually planning to work with my nutritionist and maybe come up with the labels of side effects of dead animal flesh and say, here are the side effects. We're going to put together like a little black box warning of some type of these bad foods. But more people, I'm starting to see a trend in my practice at least, of more people looking up drugs and coming back and saying, well, I was afraid to start this drug because I looked up the side effects and it was problematic. I said, well, all the drugs I give you have side effects. They're all poison. I tell them that.